Hey, good evening, kids. It's Mr. Coyne from District 65, a school social worker at Lincoln and Washington Elementary Schools. And today is Thursday, April 9, and it's Doggy Loo Storytime. And we have a special neighbor today. He actually is my best friend, Mr. Rob. Thank you for joining us today. This is Doggy Loo, Mr. Rob, and he's been reading stories these last few weeks. And before we start, if it's okay, I'll light a candle and then help the kids calm down and focus, and then we'll get started.
Awesome.
So remember, kids, if you're going to light a candle, make sure you do it with your parents' permission and with them watching, and never leave a candle lit in a room by itself. You should always blow it out before you leave. All right, kids, let's focus. Body still, ears listening, eyes watching, and voices quiet. Thank you, Mr. Rob.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Doggy Loo, for letting me read one of my favorite stories. And it's called Salt in His Shoes. And it's a story of Michael Jordan, Pursuit of a Dream. And it was written by his mom and his sister, and Rosalind Jordan. And Kadir Nelson is the illustrator. So I wanted to make sure that I said that. All right, so I'm going to get started.
Mr. Rob, is there a signature on the front?
There is. When this book came out, I went to downtown Chicago to get it signed by Michael Jordan's mother, Dolores, and his sister, Rosalind. So they were very, very sweet people. So they addressed it to me and my wife and Marta, my firstborn child, who is now 19 years old. And I read this to her and each one of my kids every night. All right. Salt in His Shoes, A Pursuit of Dreams. And there's a picture of Michael. Michael loved to play basketball. Every Saturday, he followed his older brothers, Larry and Ronnie, to the park, hoping that they would let him play. And if one of the guys who usually played with them didn't show, they always did. But there was one problem. His name was Mark, and he was the tallest boy on the court. And that's a picture of Mark and Michael playing each other. "What's the matter, Mikey? Too short?" flapped his arms in Michael's face. "Over here," Larry shouted. But when Michael threw the ball, Mark's long arms came out of nowhere and knocked the ball away. It flew into the hands of a player on Mark's team. He made the basket, and the game was over. Just like that. I'm really sorry, guys. If I were taller, that would have never happened. All the way home, Michael apologized, even though there was no one mad at him. His older brother, Ronnie, tried to cheer him up. "Look, little brother, you played good today. Don't worry. We'll win the next time." When the boys got home, Michael went into the kitchen where Mama was cooking dinner. He was still disappointed, and she could tell. "You guys lost again today, huh?" Michael nodded. He sat quietly for a minute, then said, Mama, how can I grow taller? And that's the look that Mama had on her face. Now, Mama knew the answer to a lot of questions, but this was a tough one. She thought for a moment as she sprinkled salt and pepper on the chicken she was making for dinner. Then she smiled, looked at Michael, and said, Salt. Salt? Michael looked at his mama. Salt in your shoes. We'll put salt in your shoes and pray every night. Before you know it, you'll be taller, she replied. Salt in my shoes. Michael sat quietly to himself. Surely Mama was teasing. He sat staring out of the window trying to figure out how salt was going to help him grow. He noticed the rose bushes outside in Mama's garden. They had grown high along the fence, and roses of all colors were blooming on the vines. He thought to himself, I remember when Mama first planted those bushes. Michael's face lit up. If Mama knows how to make those rose bushes grow taller, then maybe she's right. Maybe salt in my shoes really will help me grow. Growing more excited, Michael twirled around and started asking lots of questions. Mama, how long will it take? And how tall do you think I'll get? Smiling, Mama sat down next to him and explained, in order for this to work, the most important thing to do are to be patient and to listen to what I tell you and say your prayers every night. Listening carefully, Michael shook his head. Okay, Mama, I'll be patient. But what does saying my prayers have to do with it? Everything, Mama replied, and she hugged him. Now go wash up and tell your brothers and sisters to get ready for dinner. Michael dashed out of the kitchen, almost knocking over his father, who was walking in. What's he up to now? Asked Daddy. All the usual, laughed Mama, chasing a dream. Later, during dinner, Mama noticed that Michael was barely eating anything. He was already daydreaming about being taller. Michael, first things first, you won't grow if you don't eat, especially your vegetables, Mama said. But I'm not really hungry, he said, raising her eyebrows. Mama gave him a stern look. Slowly, Michael picked up the fork and began to eat. Minutes later, his plate was clean, and he was asking for more. That evening at bedtime, Michael set his favorite game shoes on the floor next to his growth chart hanging on the wall. Then he put his pajamas on, said his prayers, and jumped into bed. When Mama came in, Michael was fast asleep. By the look on his face, she could tell that he was already playing basketball in his dreams. Standing by his bed, Mama sprinkled salt in his shoes. Then she prayed quietly over him as she did all of her children. Dear God, please help Michael to be the best he can be and to give his best in all that he does. And Lord, could you please make him just a little bit taller tomorrow than he is today? Thank you. Amen. After that night, Michael wore his favorite game shoes everywhere he went, even to church. And he stopped going to the park with his brothers on Saturdays. Instead, he stayed home and practiced. He wanted to grow a few more inches before he went back to the park. After 2 months of practicing and waiting patiently and praying, Michael stood next to the growth chart on his wall. Nothing. He hadn't grown an inch. He was so disappointed. But he did not stop believing. I've just got to give it time, like Mama said, Michael thought to himself. And that's what he did. 2 more months of practicing went by and still nothing. Now Michael was becoming a little sad. Not only had he not grown 1 inch, but he also missed playing basketball with Larry and Ronnie. About the only thing he didn't miss was being picked on by Mark. When the next Saturday came, his brother tried to get Michael to go with them to the park, but he wouldn't budge. Mama had begun to worry. When she saw Michael sitting alone on the steps, she said to Daddy, maybe you should go out and talk to him. So Daddy went out and sat with Michael. He asked, what's wrong, son? You haven't gone to the park with your brothers for a while now. Are you okay? Michael didn't say anything at first. Then he looked at Daddy and said, I thought I would at least be a few inches taller by now. I did everything Mama told me to do, but nothing's happened. Michael, why do you want to be taller? Daddy asked. If I were taller, I'd be a great player, and I could help our team win, Michael answered. But you are a great player, son, and you already have everything it takes to be a winner right in here. And he pointed to his heart. Being taller may help you play a little better, but not as much as practice, determination, and giving your best will. Those are the things that make a real winner. Michael thought about what Daddy said for a minute, then suddenly he jumped up, took off. Where are you going? Daddy yelled after him. I've got a game today. I'm late, Michael yelled back. When Michael reached the park, The game had started. He sat on the bench, hoping he would get a chance to play, and he did. The game was almost over and the score was tied when John, one of the guys on Michael's team, fell and hurt himself. Here was Michael's chance. Michael joined his team in the huddle as they gathered on the sideline for a timeout. Okay, the game is tied. All we need is 1 point. Who wants to take the shot? Ronnie asked. He looked in Michael's direction, feeling more confident than ever. Michael said, "I'll do it." When the whistle blew and the game began, Mark began to pick on Michael as usual. Still trying to play with the big boys, huh? Mark taunted. But Michael paid him no attention. Taller or not, he had been practicing, and today he was determined to win. Larry threw the ball inbounds to Michael. Michael caught it, bounced it for a moment, and then took off running. As he approached Mark shifted to his right. Michael shifted to his left. Mark followed. But while he was still shifting, Michael spun to his left. He stepped behind Mark and shot the ball. The ball arced far above his opponent's hands and fell silently through the hoop. 2 points. The game was over. Michael's team had won. It was just as Michael had dreamed. When he realized what he had done, Michael took off running and didn't stop until he reached home. Bursting through the door, he shouted, "I did it! Daddy, I did it! I shot right over the tall guy's head and we won the game." Running in behind him, Ronnie and Larry joined the celebration. "That's right, little brother, you did it. You won the game for us." Michael remembered the look that Ronnie gave him during his last time out of the game and said, "No, we won the game, but I was the star." They all laughed. After that day, Mama stopped putting salt in Michael's shoes, but Michael did not stop being patient and working hard and playing. So that must what helped him become the 6'6" all-star with the Chicago Bulls that he became, working hard every day and never forgetting the story of the salt in his shoes. The end.
That's beautiful, Mr. Rob. Is that one of your favorite kids' stories?
That was one of my favorite kids' stories because I was a big Michael Jordan fan. So You and I both lived through the 90s when they finally won, when our team here, Chicago Bulls, finally won, 1991. So that was kind of the start. So to see his meteoric rise, it was fun to watch. But a lot of people can take that in many different avenues. I mean, whether it's your work, hard work pays off, and that's the story that his mother and sister told about him. I thought it was pretty inspiring, and all my kids enjoyed it, and they enjoyed me reading the book to the end. And yeah, it was fun, and it was something in there for everyone.
Mr. Rob, Doggy Loo and the kids in District 65 love to have books read to them, so thank you so much for reading this. They also like to know if the readers, were ever in kindergarten or first grade. Were you ever a young boy?
Absolutely. I was a young first grader and kindergartner on the west side of Chicago. Ooh. And I went to a school called Helen M. Heffron on the west side, Wilcox and Costner. And it still stands today. So it was I was a kid too. So
did your parents ever read to you?
My mom read to me. I was an early reader. So my mom was a preschool teacher. So that's when she fell in love with preschool teaching, was teaching us how to read. So we all read before we became kindergartners, so we were ready.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Rob. We're having these Doggy Loo Storytimes Monday through Friday, and tomorrow we have someone coming from Guatemala, actually, who's going to be speaking about his transition in living in Evanston and what it's been like the last 40 years since he moved as a young boy from Guatemala.
Excellent.
Mr. Felix will be joining us tomorrow.
Felix. Yeah, I know Felix.
But thank you so much, and kids, do what you can to help your folks at home, and be safe, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.